So, mothers and others, our next candidate this evening, and we're going to have a little bit of a longer conversation with him because of the position that he's running for, but also because I really feel like we need to educate all of you about some things that are going on in Texas. So expect a slightly longer conversation, but I'm really excited to introduce you all to Bill Burch. He is running for Texas Railroad Commissioner. So welcome, Bill. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're running for office?
Thank you very much. I am Bill Burch. I have, first of all, I've worked in the oil and gas business for 23 years. I'm an oil well firefighter and I'm a drilling engineer. And the one thing in particular that most people don't recognize about me is that I've worked in over 65 countries. So Texas isn't the only place I've ever worked. And I certainly have, I've seen some of the garden destinations. I spent a lot of time in my career in the Middle East, all throughout Asia. I've worked in the Arctic in both southern Patagonia as well as the Arctic in Alaska, and I've drilled in Deepwater Gulf of Mexico. You name it. I've seen the conditions on this planet, and the conditions in West Texas are something to really behold.
I bet they are. So, Bill, tell us. There are so many people that don't know what the Railroad Commissioner does, the Railroad Commission does, because there's three of you all, and they don't know what this particular group does. So can you just tell us a little bit more about what the Railroad Commission does?
Yeah. So first and foremost, the Railroad Commission has nothing to do with railroads, right? So it was founded in 1891 by Mr. Hogg, and originally it was to regulate the railroad industry. And then as we drilled wells in Beaumont and Spindletop, for example, we started moving oil around the state in barrels, and we moved them on the rails system. So the Railroad Commission became somewhat of the agency that managed the transportation of the product for many years. But then as it grew in size and importance in the national conversation after World War II, the Texas Railroad Commission basically was one of the largest producers of oil in the nation and really managed our national energy supply side through the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And a lot of people don't know, it's how OPEC actually modeled its own style of structure was based on the Texas Railroad Commission. And right now, the Texas Railroad Commission in 2005 actually got rid of all of the railroad side of it and moved it to TxDOT. So really what it still manages today in the state of Texas is all our natural energy supply side. So things like we still have historic coal mining operations. We still have historic uranium mining operations, which a lot of people don't know, mostly all in the sunset phase. Of course, all of the oil and gas side of the house, plus all of the pipeline side. And it's one of those agencies that it's misnamed, but it's one of the most powerful, one of the most critical agencies in the state of Texas. And in the 2024 cycle, it's actually nice because we have just enough oxygen to actually have a conversation about what the agency is, what it does, and to educate people on the importance of what the Texas Railroad Commission is.
Absolutely. So can you, I gotta have a better idea what the Railroad Commission does as a whole, and there's three of you, and so I know because Luke ran last session, and he of course did not win that election, and the seat that you're running against is currently held by Christy Kratic. So you're running against Christy Kratic. Now, Christy Kratic and the Kratic family, incredibly corrupt. I mean, they had a whole entire write-up about the level of corruption that is running through the Kratic family. It was in Texas Monthly. It's really, really bad. So can you tell us a little bit more insight, like from your point of view, what are you seeing from your point of view with the corruption and how it is impacting just the industry?
Well, so there's a lot of issues. So first and foremost, the industry has been allowed to self-regulate, and that's intentional. Unfortunately, the way the Texas House and Senate has allowed for the deregulation of our environmental stewardship has been through underfunding and basically intentionally allowing the industry to self-regulate. And I tell folks on the campaign stop, go jump on your local highway, do 120 miles an hour, go call your local sheriff and turn yourself in for speeding and tell me how that works, right? This is how we currently are managing our entire oil and gas operation. And there are some operators, of course, who try to do the best thing and they try to do the right thing, but there's a lot of unscrupulous actors, unfortunately, that are also in the industry. And when we have this idea of self-regulation, it really fails miserably. The other issue we have is the lack of transparency, and we can definitely get a little bit more into that. But the Railroad Commission has been blatantly lying to the Texas public about the severity of the risk, the issues, the earthquakes, the saltwater disposal, and a lot of the current issues that are happening in Crane County and West Texas. But ultimately, this ultimately comes down to the commissioners, right? And things get led from the top down. And when you have a commissioner such as Mrs. Kratic and her father, who is Tom Kratic, who is, let's be honest, he's been in the House for over 50 plus years as a senator and from Midland. The reality is that a lot of deals, and he at one time was one of the most powerful senators in the state of Texas, especially when he was Speaker of the House. The reality of it is that they made a lot of deals in oil and gas where he got a 5% override or a working interest in all the projects that he helped facilitate between the landowner and the driller. Well, the problem with that is that as Mrs. Kratic has had the opportunity to make rulings on events in the oil and gas industry, instead of recusing herself, from the conversation to show not an impropriety or showing any kind of improper behavior, she's actually made direct rulings in her own personal benefit and interests, which again, if you had an attorney general who, well, I always kid people on the campaign trail, I say the only person more corrupt than the Kratic family is our attorney general. So obviously he doesn't have a problem with the conflict of interest. The reality is that we're unable to really get any change. Mrs. Kratic has served 12 years in her position, and by estimates that, like you quoted from the Texas Monthly article, they've estimated somewhere between $5 to $10 million of personal profiteering they have made on their oil deals while she's been a commissioner.
Yeah, incredibly corrupt for sure. So could you tell us a little bit more about the Deepwater Horizon project that you worked on and what your experience with that is?
Yeah. So, as somebody that is oil well firefighter, one of the most interesting projects, unfortunately, I've also actually worked on the Deepwater Horizon in 2005, just after Katrina, when a lot of the guys in Mississippi were unable to go back to work at the time. I actually went out to the rig and actually worked on the rig. So I actually have a personal history with the rig as well. But in 2010, obviously, when she blew out and caused the worst oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico's history, I was called by BP the next morning after the blowout. And I spent 140 days working in their office in Houston, working on all aspects of the issues, from the flow rate calculations to both the relief well designs and execution, the subsea capping operation, working with our government officials. Really awesome because it was during the Obama administration. So I got to meet Secretary Chu and Secretary Salazar from the Department of Interior, and Secretary Chu was the Department of Energy. And, it was one of those events in my life that was really a pinnacle event of both the engineering side of it, because we really capped and did something that's never been done before in the industry, but truly one of those things that was environmentally a watershed moment for everybody that works in oil and gas. And after that event, what I've told a lot of folks is that I really committed the rest of my career to prevention and trying to help prevent, get us to a next tier of emergency response, of stopping these incidents, having less environmental impact. And I have to say, over the last 13 years, I've seen the industry not actively engage in prevention as much as it should have. And that's one of the reasons I'm running for the Texas Railroad Commission. We have destroyed the state of Texas, and we have a legacy that is toxic. We are having issues with our marginalized communities in terms of oil and gas exposure and risk. We've got polluted groundwater now, like I've said earlier, in Crane County. And, in 2022, the issue with the Railroad Commission was, well, we didn't winterize enough and we had gas. We lost the power during Winter Storm Uri and all the rest of this. Now, it's actually far worse than that. We actually have now a massive 1.2 million plus oil and gas wells drilled in the state of Texas. The vast majority have not been plugged correctly and are high risk. And we have this saltwater problem that's causing earthquakes. And now we've got this whole issue of actual groundwater contamination. What's happening in the state of Texas is truly absolutely unacceptable environmental terrorism, if you want to call it as such. But we are leaving a toxic legacy for the next generation that is going to turn Texas into a Superfund site.
Absolutely. I can agree with that. So I've traveled all over Texas in the last year. I have met with ranchers in West Texas. I have met with people who live very close to the oil industry along the Texas coast. And everywhere I go, everybody seems to be complaining about, some similar things. Even when we've been doing a lot of these webinars, people have been talking about the issues with water. When you talk to people from Houston, they said, we have serious water contamination issues here in Houston. Like somebody needs to be, the adult in the room addressing these issues. And it just seems like no one's paying attention. No one's listening. And then when you go out to West Texas, they're talking about I grew up in West Texas. So that is where I'm from. And when I was growing up, they never had earthquakes. All of a sudden, there's earthquakes all the time in West Texas now. And
Yep.
this is not how it's supposed to be. We don't have earthquakes in West Texas, but now it's a daily thing where
Well,
not,
and
but
that's one of those things, it's really quite remarkable, just to point on that just real quick. Of 5 earthquakes that have ever occurred in the state of Texas's history over a 5.0 magnitude, 3 of them have occurred in the last 18 months. And I tell folks, if that's not enough of a red flag warning that literally the earth is coming apart and we're actually having these massive earthquake scenarios, like, folks, you got to wake up. I've had conversations from Austin to Abilene to Alpine to El Paso where folks are seeing the earthquakes and feeling them, and they're saying, what's going on? And they're all anthropologically driven from our oil and gas saltwater disposal problem. And what a lot of people don't realize about the oil and gas industry is that for every barrel of oil we get out of the ground in West Texas, we get 5 to 6 barrels of this toxic, radioactive, isotope-laden produced water. And this stuff is so toxic, if you grew up in West Texas, it will kill mesquite. And you know how hard it is to kill mesquite. So this is something that is really, honestly, super toxic to bring to surface. And the fact that it's getting in our groundwater and we're having these earthquakes is awful. And the other thing about it is that, because Texas has so low of environmental standards, thanks to our Republican colleagues who have managed to focus on profiteering more than the environmental stewardship of being a good citizen of their neighbors, is that we're taking the toxic legacy problems also from New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Louisiana across our borders to bring it into Texas to dispose of it here because, hey, we want to turn this state into a Superfund site.
Yeah. So a long time ago, have you read the book, Mr. Texas?
I have not, but I'll definitely put it on my list.
Okay, so we're reading it right now. It's for our book club. So we have a book club called the Mothers Against Greg Abbott Anti-Fascist Book Club. And we're reading it this month. And in this, so apparently there was this thing where they called it the poo-poo choo-choo train. And they took basically sewage waste from New York and then they put it out in West Texas. And it was like a thing. So like, this is really a thing where we're taking sewage and, toxic materials from other states and just saying, oh, yeah, I guess it's okay to put it in Texas. Who the hell cares? Just West Texas. Who needs it?
Yep.
Go right ahead and dump it all. It doesn't matter.
And thankfully, Mr. Bill Addington, who is out in Hudson County, has been a very vocal opponent to the original proposals for low-level nuclear waste storage in Texas. It was a proposal, he fought like hell against the sewage dumping from New York in Texas and West Texas. But, unfortunately, and this is the real bad thing about the state of Texas, is that we have basically taken authority away from the EPA. And the Texas Railroad Commission actually is the supreme agency of basically environmental stewardship in the state of Texas. And most Texans don't appreciate it's not just about regulating the energy supply and getting it to market safely. They're also actually responsible for the vast majority of our environmental stewardship requirements. The TCEQ, which is supposed to be our air and soil monitoring agency, is also greatly underfunded intentionally to allow for operators to assert their environmental stewardship and requirements in the state. And the Railroad Commission, which is responsible for basically, again, the vast majority of our oil and gas footprint and our groundwater, has really kind of said, oh, well, who cares? And, it's even so bad as this last Tuesday when I was at the Railroad Commission open meeting, the commissioners actually allowed our attorney general to go ahead and file suit against the EPA to not actually impose the methane rule from COP28 because, hey, we don't want any federal requirements in the state of Texas. It's like, folks, the Permian is one of the biggest emitters of natural gas and uncombusted methane because of our infrastructure and our leaking wells. And this is one of those things that we have to address for the future society and our younger generations, that as they get older and they live in a society that it's driving climate change. We know methane is 86 times more potent to greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And we have to address it. But yet here's our Texas Railroad Commission definitively saying, oh, who cares? The environment doesn't.
Yeah. And just a reminder for all of you that do not know this, Texas is the #1 state polluter in the entire United States. So when we look up and we look at that ozone layer and it's deteriorating, a lot of it is because of Texas. Just want to put that out there.
Well, I'll say one other thing too is, a lot of people don't realize that the Texas Railroad Commission also manages all our acid gas and our chemical storage wells, which is something that we don't talk about very often, which is really reassuring as well. because again, a lot of our chemical facilities have stored some very nasty things in the ground in our salt caverns all throughout the Gulf Coast. And this stuff all starts with things like methyl ethyl butyl, which are not only flammable, but known toxins, and also known cancer-causing agents. And we don't sit on just a little bit, we sit on a lot of it. And the reality is that all throughout the Gulf Coast region in these old salt domes, we have a lot of things that can never come back to surface. And the reality is the Texas Railroad Commission is also the managing agency for that. So I challenge people that if it's not one of the most important conversations, it's the only executive race in 2024, this literally is about the entire legacy of Texas and where we're headed as a state environmentally, and also our economy and our future. And folks, you gotta realize the Texas Railroad Commission is just the wrong named agency, but this is the year to get your homework done and understand the importance of what the agency really does.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I think that everybody should do as far as like studying what the agency does and how they're mismanaging a lot of things, I am really going to invite everybody to please, you all can follow on, I think on TikTok and maybe on Instagram, it's Zombie Wells, and it's Sarah Strogner who does that. Mm-hmm. And I know that, I think like you all are friends. She's discovered a whole entire area of Texas where Christy Kratic, they do the no-fly zone because they didn't want anyone to know what happened in a certain area here in Texas where they had some leakage and some really terrible things happen to some wells. So could you tell us a little bit about that? Because thing is that we should all be talking about this. We should all 100%. Be concerned. And it just seems like, again, Greg Abbott's so busy barking about the border to distract us from some other real issues that are affecting Texans, like this well. So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So in June of 2021, Sarah called me out to the Antina Cattle Company Ranch, and it was all featured in a Texas Monthly article that talked about these first zombie wells. These were wells that were plugged originally by Gulf Oil, Chevron Heritage, and unfortunately they were not plugged correctly. And due to this overinjection of salt water through the central section of the Permian Basin, they're actually flowing back to surface. And so when she first called me out there, I was like, Sarah, what do you need me for at this ranch? Like, come on, this is stuff that's not 1950 heritage. Like this isn't, what do you need my expertise for? She's like, no, I think you really need to come out and see this. So I went out to the ranch and I saw it and I was like, wow, like this is unbelievable, the size and aerial extent of the problem. So we've unearthed in the last 2 years, 102 wells, of which right now on the ranch alone, 91 of them are currently flowing into the groundwater, either flowing methane, flowing actual black oil, or flowing this radioactive toxic produced water into the surface and into the soils. And this is legitimately happening today, folks. In the last 2 years, we have already counted 150 wells in a 500,000 acre section already between the 3 counties that is already in contamination and blowing out. There are, and these are the ones we've only counted so far. And I tell folks, 500,000 acres is hard to visualize. Houston, Texas, throughout the Grand Parkway is 426,000 acres. It's bigger than the city of Houston already. And look, the Permian's 9 million acres. So, I mean, the Permian's a pretty big chunk of dirt. But the reality is that this problem is extensive across the entire basin. And we have a real issue in terms of what's happening out there. So when I went to the Railroad Commission after the first 2 wells were plugged in June of 21 through August of 21, I went to the Railroad Commission and told them, look, I said, y'all got a major problem. You got to get ahead of this narrative. You need to start to address the underlying cause. You need to start doing some forensic science to look at what's the causation. How is this happening? Well, I come to find out that not only was the oil and gas industry already aware of the problem, and I was the naive one who didn't actually understand the magnitude of the problem, that they had been 20 years recognizing that this problem was building and occurring and coming. But what the most amazing part to me was that the Railroad Commission totally dismissed it. I had 23 years of experience as an oil well firefighter. I'm an engineer by background. I've seen all the issues around the world. And they told me I didn't know what I was talking about. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. So they actually told me, oh, thanks for coming to Austin. Have some nice barbecue while you're in town. And I got to tell you, I have never been so mad in my entire life. I honestly thought about running in December of 21 because of those issues. But the timing wasn't right for me. So I decided to wait to the 2024 cycle. And here we go. So I'm running to help correct these issues.
That is amazing. So buckle up, Christy Kratic. Here comes Bill, right? Okay, so
she's gonna have a very hard time. Yeah, I'll just say one last quick thing. What really differentiates the problem with the Railroad Commission is that in order to be a district attorney, you have to be an attorney. In order to be a judge, you actually have to understand the law and actually be an attorney. But to run for the Texas Railroad Commissioner, one case like 2022, you just had to be a Grammy Award-winning gospel singer. And in the case of Christy Kratic, I got to say, she's an attorney by background, but she's actually never worked in oil and gas. And the problem with not having the operational experience of actually working on a drilling rig, understanding the technical issues in the subsurface, and truly understanding the design basis of how we operate in the industry, it doesn't help anybody. So what this industry needs is truly the right resources of people who have the capacity to truly be involved from an operational perspective. And that's what I bring to the table. And that's unique. It has been a long time since we've had a commissioner run with real operational background and knowledge.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bill. What a great introduction. And I hope we can meet again. And I'm looking forward to meeting you on the campaign trail. One of these days, we're going to end up in the same place. I don't know. I'm going to be in Amarillo tomorrow. Are you going to Amarillo by any chance?
No, unfortunately, no. I am actually right now in Fairfield, Texas. And tomorrow I've got like 3 events between Austin, San Antonio, and Houston. So I'm not sure how I'm going to get all 3 covered in that triangle, but we're gonna figure something out for tomorrow.
You're gonna figure it all out.
I'll definitely see you on the trail, though.
Okay, that sounds great. So, Bill, tell us, where can we find you, and how best can we support you right now?
So you can find me on all the social media channels: LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I got all the sites. Still working on getting a little bit more on the TikTok side, but I'm getting better at it. And my website is Burch, B-U-R-C-H, 4, the number 4, T-R-R-C, the Texas Railroad Commission.com. And you're more than welcome to jump on. Certainly could use the any questions you have. Don't ever hesitate to email me. I love to ask and answer technical questions. And I'm a small grassroots campaign. I'm not taking PAC money. I'm not advertising and looking for oil and gas money because, again, I don't believe in the working interest of our current commissioner and how she's managing things. So I'm working for the benefit of everybody in Texas, and I could really use your support with your Act Blue donation and on my website as well. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. So you heard that, mothers and others. We need to support some great candidates like Bill and Dee. So if you have, a few extra dollars, please donate to their campaigns, because what we're doing right now in Texas, Texas is, with the Republicans have a stronghold on Texas. So when we have great candidates that are running, we have to remember what they're doing is brave politics. And it's so important right now to do brave politics every day and show up and be brave every day and stand up and decide to run for office. There's always a lot on the line, but when you're a candidate, there's a certain level of vulnerability that goes with that. So I appreciate all these candidates that are running for office. And you heard it here tonight on Thursday, February the 8th. We had really great candidates. We had Bill, Burch, and Dee Howard Mullins. And so thank you all so much for joining us this evening. And I look forward to seeing the both of you on the campaign trail. Good night.
You again. Thank you very much.